Thank you so much, Kashima, and thank you so much for everybody joining. We have 62 folks online, and the number keep growing, and this is great to see. I am the chair of the Career and Connections Committee of the University of Chicago, New York Club, and this is our second AI Startup Showcase featuring companies founded and led by University of Chicago alumni. And what we're going to do tonight is going to be rapid pace. None of you are going to get bored. We're going to start with a 20-minute panel with two investors working in venture backing these innovative companies. And then we will switch to the five company spotlights. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A session. So feel free to use the Q&A function or the chat to put your questions or hold your questions till the end. We'll get to as many of them as possible. And if you are interested in meeting any of the companies here and supporting UChicago companies, definitely reach out and we're happy to connect you, reach out directly to the founders or the investor themselves. So we'll turn to the first part of today's session, which is a pretty informal discussion about venture funding. Some of you may be in the space, others may be thinking about fundraising. Others may be thinking about starting companies. So I myself is an early stage investor. I've been doing this for over 15 years, largely investing in early stage emerging technologies and data companies in finance, risk, and health. And with me today, we have Jamil. Jamil, say hi to everybody. And Stefano. Stefano, say hi to everybody. And I'll just ask each of them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about where are they investing from and their focus. So we start with you, Stefano.
All right. Hello, everyone. And it's great being here. I'm a Chicago Booth alumnus, and I'm a VP at Energy Capital Ventures. We invest in early stage energy transition companies. There's a lot of convergence between AI and energy. So this is another side of the AI coin, if you want.
Jamil.
Hello, everyone. I am Jamil Ahmed. I am also a venture capital investor. I am with the corporate venture capital team here at Northwestern Mutual. We're a CVC fund solely backed by Northwestern Mutual. And to simply describe us, we are deploying capital in the early stage, seed to Series B in the fintech sector. Investing money in wealth tech, advisor tech, insure tech startups. Alongside that, we also look at DeFi and stable coins, and finally also dabbling in enterprise AI. We tend to focus mostly just on the US-based startups.
So maybe just follow with you, Jamil, on the corporate venture and strategic investment side. So if someone were pitched to you, what are you looking for? How should they get to your fund? What sort of stages are you looking at?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Like I described, I'll start with the stages. Early stage fintech funds, so we're investing money seed through Series B. As a corporate venture capital investor, we are investing not only for financial returns, but also for the strategic angle. What that means is that we're going to be on the lookout for startups that are more strategically aligned with the core operations of Northwestern Mutual, which is a life insurance and a wealth management company. So, for example, those verticals of wealth tech, advisor tech, insure tech are of a strategic importance to us. So those are the areas that we would be looking at. Sorry, what was the other part of your question, Joyce?
How do they sort of get to your fund? How do they get access to pitching to the corporate venture? Is it through your business units because of strategic fit, or you actually go out and solicit companies in those space as well?
Great question. So yes, easily put, conferences or industry conferences are a great way to get in touch with us. The other way is basically, if one advice that I can give to founders at this point is that in addition to building out your business, you should also be spending your time or investing your time in building out your network of investors. in the sector that you're building in, because that's how deals get done. So we also source a majority of our deals through our fellow investors. We do look at some cold inbound emails, but that happens very rarely. So yeah, to recap, I would say conferences and a majority of the deal flow for us comes through our network of fellow investors. And from time to time, because we're a strategic CVC investor, if the business units at Northwestern Mutual are partnered with some of the startups, we tend to source deals that way as well.
And one more question to you before we go to Stefano. So, insurtech, fintech, pretty broad. You also seem like you're also investing in stablecoin, crypto related side. What are some of the most interesting areas or exciting areas that you yourself are focused on for the corporate venture fund?
Appreciate that. Yeah. So obviously, we're a team of two investors here at Northwestern Mutual. So we're basically, there's no divide and conquer. Being a small team, we're looking at all of these different sectors. So in my day-to-day job, it's really interesting. I could be looking at a wealth tech deal one day and then a stable coin deal the next day. So it keeps the job interesting. It keeps it fun. So no particular sector that I tend to focus on. But speaking of what's the most interesting thing to me across all of the sectors that we're active in, I would say stable coins lately, because just because of the opportunity in the infrastructure being built around tokenization of real world assets, around money movement on a stable coin rails to move money more freely, quickly, cheaply, and hopefully safely as well. That's certainly of interest to both me as a venture investor in this space and to the parent company.
And what's the interest of insurance company as relates to stablecoin? Not to go down into that rabbit hole, but just for the audience.
I cannot divulge a lot here, but the interest does not come from the insurance angle as such. We're also a wealth management company, so we're still trying to really understand what's happening in this space and see where we can come in as an investor, because being a CVC, we tend to exist both, or being the CVC, we tend to exist as a conduit for the corporate to provide our business expertise to the founders in the areas of a strategic interest to us, but also bring those competitive insights to the parent. So speaking of the stablecoin sector, nothing concrete has emerged as far as any strategic partnerships, but we're really just looking at this space, or just starting to explore this space to understand what's happening, what are the trends, and are there any players that can, help us in any manner as a wealth manager to provide perhaps brokerage and trading services sometime down the line using the stablecoin infrastructure. But
Excellent.
nothing concrete, just like I said, existing as just a conduit to see what's happening in this space really at this point.
Thank you for that perspective. Stefano, over to you. A little bit of pivot. Tell us more about your sector, what's exciting in energy, climate related areas.
Yeah, thanks, Joyce. So we invest a lot in around the energy transition space, and we have a special focus on what we call green molecules. That everything that has to do with natural gas, which is about 45% of primary energy use in the U.S. And I think one element that is very exciting is that in the past we've had very stable energy, and especially electricity consumption. And now with AI, when you look at it used to be a digital infrastructure story, and that digital infrastructure has really moved very quickly into real infrastructure. So we're building these data centers, and data centers are adding a lot of load to the grid. So the grid is moving from 20, 25 years of very stable demand into a new world of demand growth. And that, because it's a real world and there's a lot of physical constraints, it's a big problem. So whenever there's a big market that has a big problem, that tends to generate opportunities for investment. Things that we like a lot are things that can either enable new capacity, whether we need to connect new excuse me, new load or supply into the system. So software for grid orchestration, software for predictive loads and predicting and figuring out ways to better design an integrated system that works with multiple different energy sources. We're looking at different supply, different ways of making energy. I'm sure you've read about nuclear fusion getting very close, small modular nuclear reactor. You might have a small nuclear reactor in your neighborhood very soon, who knows? So all the way from these more esoteric opportunities into more practical, if you want, opportunities like figuring out how to make the best use of systems we already have, improving the efficiency of a power plant by 1, 2, 3, 4%, trying to open up more capacity using this, basically using software to optimize the way we're using the system so that we can use the existing wires, transformers, capacitors, and everything just a little bit more than what we used to do before, so that we can connect new load in a world that is used to move very slowly, and it's now seeing a demand for interconnection and for load growth that is coming up very steeply.
And for the focus that you have, the fund, it seems like you have a lot of strategic investors or co-investors and patient capital, because a lot of these companies are solving really hard problems. Would you agree with that, or how should we think about sort of the sub asset focus
Yeah.
that you have?
Yeah, so similar, and not, I mean, I would guess similar and a little bit different from Jamil. We have 7 publicly traded corporations as investors. So we're not exactly a CVC, and we don't have to do, their interests. We're trying to leverage the best of both worlds. And so we're trying to leverage their insights and access to their system, to their customers, and everything as a external BU almost, if you want, to provide value to the companies we invest in. And on the flip side, we're trying to operate as a traditional VC to be more flexible and move a little bit faster. But I would say that you're right. There's definitely a longer horizon, especially on things that are characterized as deep tech. So things that have a strong technological element, and this technology needs to be proven from the lab into a smaller demonstration, still under a control environment, then into a real world field demonstration, but still a smaller scale than commercial. And then they can actually go to commercial. And then there's this big issue of, will we be able to actually make money once it gets commercial, right? So there's a very non-trivial questions along the way. And each one of these steps can take 2 to 3 years. So we are trying to find, first of all, focus on opportunities that we feel have a shorter time to market. So we're looking at things that don't require hundreds of billions or billions of dollars in CapEx or in investment in R&D to get to that commercialization stage. So in our portfolio, you see we have a lot of modular distributed technologies, small scale. We try to look for things that have very high unit economics, so high gross margins. And that might be a way, in a sense, to buy down the initial incremental cost of the first units getting installed and still have positive economics. For some of the ones that are much longer life, and so there's in a sense necessary patience. We try opportunistically to see if there's opportunities to exit through secondaries and maybe exit a portion of our position. We haven't had that opportunity yet, but there's been an instance in which a company has raised a lot of money after our investment, and we're flying kind of very high. And so maybe next round we could exit a portion of that. And so what we try to do is at least return the capital invested, maybe a little bit more, and then we can keep a good chunk of that position to grow, which could be, from here, we made investment in 4 or 5 years ago. It could be another 5, but very likely 10 years before we exit.
And just switching gears, given we have limited time, in terms of the pitch, we see a lot of pitches every day, every year, probably in the thousands, in terms of the inbounds. And what's your advice to, entrepreneurs who may be starting out or just, thinking about fundraising? What's a clear pitch to you, and what do you look for? I think in the industry, there some survey done, and DocSend is one of those vendors where a lot of entrepreneurs use to put their pitch deck, and it seems like the average time someone go through a deck first pass is about 2 to 3 minutes max. So something has to catch the attention of investors. So what are your advice in terms of a clear pitch?
I'll venture first, and Jamil, you can build on. One of the things that we look for is really what problem are you solving, right? And that needs to come up very quickly, and it needs to be specific and clear in the message. We're looking for clarity. We're looking for short pitches, short decks. You don't want to see 30 pages with 8 point, investment banking grade with like super crazy amounts of information, because there's just no time to go through it. And so just say very quickly, what problem are you trying to solve? Why is it important, and why you're the best one to solve it? And that will get you a phone call, and that's your next stage.
I really don't have anything to add. I mean, you stole the words right out of my mouth, Stefan, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with all of those points. Keep the pitch deck short. One thing that I would say is very important. See if you can convey the story more graphically or pictorially rather than just relying on a lot of text, to Stefan's point, because I'm surprised to hear, Joyce, that it's 2 to 3 minutes, because I thought it's under a minute that an investor is going to look at a
Well, we're
pitch.
UChicago investors, so we take a little bit more time.
Probably. One thing to build on Stefan's point is something personally important to me is why this founder is building this business in this space. So in addition to the product market fit, the revenue model, the competitive landscape, yes, all of those pieces are certainly important, but that founder market piece is just as important. So really what we're trying to assess there is that this person is not only committed to this idea, but they're going to not only build it out at this stage, but also scale it. And that's the important piece for the investor to understand and to back that founder in that space.
And I would just add that one of the reasons that we talk about the pitch is that we're also using the pitch, both the on paper and through the presentation, the actual pitch itself, to see how well the founder can actually communicate what they're building, because they have to go sell to the enterprise customers and others, right? So it's not just for us, it's also as a way for us to understand their communication effectiveness, their ability to work the room, their ability to go out and be that founder-led salesperson, because they, especially early stage, they wouldn't have the capital to do that. Okay, switching gears. So there's often a question about, I get this question a lot. Not necessarily the pre-seed stage companies, because generally the option to fundraise there is through a SAFE, which is a version of a convertible note. But then as you get into seed and Series A, a lot of founders are kind of getting different advice. Oh, should I raise a seed through convertible note or a SAFE, continuation of a SAFE, or should I actually do a price round? What's your view on that? Or does it matter?
Volunteer again. Oh,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think as much as possible, do a price round. It's a better signal to investors. I think saves are excellent tools at the pre-seed stage. When you're trying to do something quick, you're getting money from angels. You're probably getting it staggered over time, and so it would be difficult to make 6, 7, 8 rolling closes. And so you can stack a little bit of the funding kind of in a come as you go. But as soon as you start to get into your next round and you're looking for a little bit more capital, it sends a much better signal to the investment community that you're doing a price round, that somebody's taking the time to do the work, and to create the right type of governance, the right type of investor rights, and everything that actually make the other product, other than the product you're selling, which is the investment product that you're also selling to the investment community. Look, this is a security, and this is a security that you can participate in, and it will have, it will accrue value. And we're starting right now to look like a more mature company. One other element I would add, saves were added as a bridge primarily, like before were popularized by YC. And when you're doing a bridge, usually you've operated for 12, 18 months, and then you just need a little extra to get to the next value inflection point. So you were raising with the assumption that in 3 to 6 months, we're going to actually do a price round. And the safe or bridge equivalent would make a lot of sense because now we can convert into that price round, of which we have a lot of visibility. When we start to use the instrument a bit outside of bounds, and for reasons that is not what it was meant for, it loses a lot of the meaning in a sense, and I feel that it leaves a lot to be desired. Obviously, it brings money into the company, but your next round you'll have to convert, and so there's a little bit of baggage coming in, and it will not set you up for long-term success, I think.
I agree again with everything that Stefan just said. It's largely around the dynamics of the business. Like you were saying, Joyce, at the early stages, yes, SAFE is the easiest instrument to spin up. Doesn't cost a lot with the lawyers and those things. So as a company matures, a price round definitely sends a very strong signal. But one thing that is required for a price round or the investment community is going to be looking for are some tangible commercial metrics. So for example, if you were to price your seed, it would be the 2 years that I've been doing venture capital, it would be really hard to get a lead investor to put forth a priced term sheet for a seed round if you don't have revenue. I mean, in some areas like AI, for example, I think you can go to the market with just a pitch deck and get a very healthy valuation, especially these days. But in the more in areas of fintech, this is what we see. It would be very hard to get a price round done without a revenue. And as Stefan was talking about, bridge capital usually is raised on convertible note. It really just the instrument just lends itself such that the investors are going to be more friendly to that if you're going from a price round to a bridge because you require more capital, it's a capex intensive business, or you're pivoting, or you're seeing a new opportunity in the market that you want to raise more capital for before your next price round. A convertible note helps you do that as a founder. It's really just about, I would say, as an investor, I would focus more on what are the business metrics, what's the business doing, what market is it going after, how much of the market have they been able to capture, and the revenue speaks to all of those things. So think about both capital efficiency, and the use of funds. What are you going to do with those funds? And then you can have a very healthy and an informed and an educated conversation with the investment community, how they want to fund your round and what instrument they want to use.
Excellent. So we will pause here, and I think there are some questions in the Q&A for both of you. So I'll invite you to answer those questions if you can. If not, we'll circle back at the end of today's session to answer those questions live. And we will now switch to the startup spotlight. We have 5 companies founded or led by UChicago alum. And we'll start with Ralph of L&K. So with that, over to you. Every company has about 5 minutes, so I'll be your timekeeper, and we'll ask you to keep your presentation within that time frame. So over to you.
Definitely. Thank you, Joyce, for the introduction, and thank you, Jimmy and Stefano, for the background on how to enter the investor landscape. So just a quick background on myself. My name is Raouf. I'm originally from Jordan. I did my undergrad at UChicago studying computer science and economics, and we started G-Link. So G-Link is essentially an AI-powered platform building the core infrastructure that helps life science organizations identify, understand, and compliantly engage with healthcare professionals. We went through Y Combinator in the winter 25 batch from January to March. And since then, we've pretty much just been building the company. Quick background on the team. My co-founder also went to Chicago, and two other team members of ours went to Chicago. So we're very happy to be at this event, and hopefully we can help you guys in any way. So just jumping into it really quick, we essentially have two main tools. The first is called Pulse, and the second is called Nexus. So essentially what Pulse does is it really helps with market visibility and helping you identify kind of trends with the market in terms of drugs and what other pharma companies are looking for in terms of the analysts, agencies, and manual reports. And the goal there is to kind of unify these tools and have tools that speak to one another. So Pulse helps these commercial teams get an instant read on what's happening on the market. So that's where the potential is, where the money is going, where the competitive movement's happening, and where clinical behavior is shifting. And then what Nexus essentially does, it brings everything together and using this information helps you identify the best healthcare professionals to engage for the specific thing that you're working towards. And then together, the two systems give you a better market understanding so that you can engage the healthcare professionals and progress your drug development simultaneously. Okay, there we go. So yeah, just on Pulse specifically, the main challenge is that the landscape right now is very fragmented. All this information's in these different silos. So you have the prescription records and then the procedure records and kind of the device usage records, and all of them are kind of segmented, and each one has a different platform that you're going to have to go to. And along with that, the process is very reactive. The market moves, and then everyone reacts based on that. And finally, you have very limited visibility in terms of the data, and you have to usually pay coverage for all these big data providers to be able to access each different segment of data. And so essentially what we do there, just to go through them really quickly, is we kind of unified all the data from different places. So we have all the CMS data, grants, conferences, healthcare professional data from the procedures to the prescriptions to their background. And then with the analytics, everything is in real time. All the analytics and all the insights are shown up in seconds. We work with a lot of pharma companies that tell us what they're looking for based on their own drug usage, different prescription trends, etc. And then we're able to find the information and give it to them so everything's updated in real time. And finally, everything is integrated into this single platform in this pay-as-you-go method. And it's much cheaper than the current legacy providers, which honestly are a few steps behind when it comes to the HCP engagement and focus just on very surface level benchmarks. And in terms of Nexus, some of the challenges and some of the solutions is that, to kind of wrap it up in a nutshell, is it takes these companies a very long time to be able to identify and engage these healthcare professionals. So they usually need them, these doctors, researchers, etc., whether it's for R&D, speaking engagements, or a few other things that they could use them for, consulting services. And what they do is they usually go to a third-party provider who have a process that includes 5 other outsourced vendors, from the FMD compliance checks to the recruiters to the talent recruiters. Basically get all of this information, and it's a very long process. Takes a few months to get these qualified candidates, and this process repeats every time you do a new study or you're kind of exploring a new venture. So what we do essentially is through the platform, you go, you have the search bar, you write in natural language who you're looking for. We have 9 million healthcare professionals on the platform globally, covering over 95% of the US. And then you can filter through them, pick the ones you want, and you'll also get the fair market value relatively instantly. So here's just a quick walkthrough of like an end-to-end solution. I know it's very confusing, especially if you're not in the healthcare industry, and it took me a while to kind of get used to as well. But essentially what you do is first you go onto G-Link, and then you're looking for this physician, use the natural language. You can use CPT parameters, get what you're looking for. And then from there, the platform inside it instantly identifies a very precise group of healthcare professionals with all the information and relevance and a justification as to why they're relevant for what you're looking for. And then you add those to lists, and you're able to segment them and organize them in the way that you want. And then from there, sync it to your CRM, and you get the full enrichment and the omni-channel outreach, where we recommend which channel to speak to them based on our own kind of behavioral analytics that we've done, so that you can get the highest response rate. And then everything gets powered through our workflow with this base of healthcare intelligence for healthcare professionals that really hasn't existed before. So that's just a general quick idea of our company. I'd love to be of any help that I can to any of you. I added my LinkedIn and email in the chat. I'm very happy to speak with any of you, especially the entrepreneurs that are planning to get into a startup. And yeah, hopefully I stayed in the time.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Exactly within 5 minutes. And I
I
put
practiced.
Ralph's email, LinkedIn, and company link in the chat. And again, invite you to reach out to Ralph if you can help them expand their market as alumni. And also, if you have any questions about any of the companies that you hear, feel free to put in the Q&A or ask at the end of the session. So thank you again. Okay, next up we have Dimitri.
Fantastic. And thank you all very much for your time today. And thank you, Joyce, for throwing this fantastic event. I haven't chatted with the UChicago community for quite a while, so I'm excited. So Pythia is a data and intelligence insurtech. We aspire to become the Bloomberg of insurance. I spent a good part of the past decade with McKinsey, working with carriers, with brokers, with reinsurers, with all sorts of organizations. And reality is that accessing good data in insurance is challenging. And I decided to build the place that everybody can do this, because at the end of the day, success is data-driven in insurance. Now, the big innovation, so Pythia has a pretty wide variety of products. Like we cover everything from carrier benchmarking to strategy data to underwriting data. But I think that the tip of the spear is this. There is a regulatory website where all insurers need to share a variety of documents on what they're doing. And when we're saying share, they mean they need to share a lot of documents. So we carefully collected all of these documents over the past year, reaching over 22 million documents from regulatory websites. And we quickly realized that AI is impossible to parse this kind of a volume of documents without a good guideline. And so we spend the time to create basically a path for the AI to read this massive number of documents. What do they include? How do they include it? What do they mean with it? And after a whole year, the AI just delivered something that would be impossible at any other time in history except for 2025, which is siphoning all of this knowledge from millions of documents and making it accessible within minutes. Today, we work with some of the largest insurers, brokers, consultancies. I can tell you, we've been to market for a year and we work with 11 insurers. We work with half of the consultancies in the market, and the growth has been meaningful because, well, good information doesn't exist in insurance, at least before Pythia. And second, because AI opens new doors. And when you have a combination of AI and know-how, you can deliver solutions that radicalize, that radically change the environment in which you exist. Now we have a beautiful platform where all of this data is served, and it has nice visualizations, it has nice charts, and I think at the end of the day, what matters is that if you look from the existing solutions, there in every insurance company there are 20 people that know how to manage data. And they spend a meaningful part of their day doing it. They're actuaries, they're analysts. And what Pythia says is, look, we've harnessed all of this data, and it shouldn't be 20 people, it should be 200 people across your organization that do this. And that's what we're doing with our clients. We've brought data that otherwise would be, I would say, the privilege of 5 or 10 or 15 people in each insurer, if they have the budget and if they have the resources for people to analyze this data. And right now, we make it affordable for this data to access anybody and everybody, from compliance to product to portfolio. At the end of the day, our goal is to be the Bloomberg of insurance, which means bringing the highest impact data and intelligence to everybody in insurance companies, and to have an AI agent that allows people to do proactive and AI-driven decision-making. I think Pythia within 5 years will be the golden standard for data and intelligence in insurance. and people who don't subscribe to Bithia will have a competitive disadvantage. Time will tell. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Dimitris. You want to tell everybody you are Chicago booth, right?
Chicago booth,
Okay.
class of 2020. I graduated right as the pandemic was starting to get going. That it was a very fun time.
Thank you. Okay, let's keep going. Again, invite everybody to put your questions in Q&A, and we can use that to sift through the questions at the end, or you can also ask a question at the end when we have the Q&A session. So next up, we have Sakshi with Rainy.
Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Hey, everyone. I'm Sakshi, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rainy. And we are helping scientists operate their complex scientific instruments with complete confidence using our generative AI platform. We recently won the New Venture Challenge at the University of Chicago and then closed an oversubscribed round with Hyde Park Venture Partners. We are a team of scientists and engineers building for scientists. I used to build software to control massive particle accelerators back at Fermilab, and then I started doing ML work over there. Div, the CTO and my co-founder, has led engineering teams from both CrowdStrike and Visa. And Reza is a scientist from GSK and Merck, and he has built and sold scientific instruments many times. But let's talk about the problem. This is the proteomics lab at the University of Chicago. It is quite similar to other wet labs in industry and pharma companies and stuff as well. The Circle 2 instruments here are two LCMS systems, and each of these instruments cost between $500,000 to $2 million, and they're really challenging for scientists to use. Every single time a scientist needs to perform a new task, they need to figure out what to do with these instruments from the scratch. So here's what they do when they currently run into a problem. They try to fix it themselves using user manuals with a lot of jargon or online forum and risk damaging $1 million instrument. Or they ask a senior colleague. And even if they're available, they could be doing something much more productive than troubleshooting your instrument. And their last resort is to call the manufacturer's agent. And even with very expensive service contracts, which could be $40K to $200K per instrument, manufacturers take a week or longer to come to a resolution, which leaves these instruments idle and unproductive, which directly affects research, drug development timelines, and scientific discovery. So Rainy is building what scientists wish for, a centralized hub for the lab's knowledge and ongoing projects. We take information from your experiments, SOPs, manuals that come out of the manufacturer, instrument live telemetry, and lab's tribal knowledge, so that all of that information is in one place. And then when people have very specific questions to, let's say, the Ultimate 3000 instrument, which is a liquid chromatograph, you can get answers immediately, not in weeks. We take your tribal knowledge, things like colleagues' notes, to past resolution answers, images into account, and every response comes with citations that takes you right back to the source so that you know exactly where it is coming from. Scientists can save these conversations as new notes, which keeps adding to the lab's private data and improves our AI within each lab. We are running paid pilots with Northwestern University and Portal Innovations, and we're also finalizing contracts with a 100-year-old instrument manufacturer, LabConco, for one of their instrument lines and a leading nationwide instrument service provider for mass spectrometer systems. We are operating in about a $20 billion lab equipment services market, which has two sites selling to scientific labs, which include CROs, core facilities, large R&D facilities, and manufacturer partnerships, where we're starting out with a focus on 3 instruments, mass spectrometers, flow cytometers, and NMRs. And then once we have perfected that, we're going to expand to broader instrument families. So that's a SAM of about $8 billion and SAM of about $1.6 billion. Now, we're starting out with the second step of the scientific process, which is experimentation, where we embed directly into your lab's workflows and instruments. And automating instrument operations, that's a natural next step for us as we start going into instrument telemetry with LabConco. This is going to help us down the line set the stage to expand horizontally, both into experiment design and result analysis, as we have the right to win because we're collecting the data from both sides of the process. So similar to Harvey for lawyers and open evidence for physicians, we're building vertical agentic AI to operate scientific instruments in life sciences. Here's a quick recap of our journey by the numbers. And if you're a scientist or you're connected to scientists in pharma, life sciences CROs, or if you're connected with manufacturers, OEMs, I would love to connect with you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sakshi. And again, Sakshi's contact information in the chat. And if you know any labs and any potential customers and partners, definitely help your fellow UChicago founders and alumni. So let's keep going. Next up is Ponderosa AI. Rio, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Can you see my slide okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Rio Chijiwa, UChicago class of '05. I'm the founder and CEO of Ponderosa.ai. At Ponderosa, we're developing cost-effective AI-enabled fire suppression drone swarms to help protect communities from destructive wildfires. In the US alone, wildfires cause upwards of nearly $1 trillion in economic damages every year, not to mention the unquantifiable human cost of destroyed homes, neighborhoods, and communities. The key to stopping destructive wildfires is to stop them early. Incipient stage wildfires double in size every 3 to 5 minutes, so it grows exponentially. But traditional resources can take 20 minutes to arrive, even in the very best case, sometimes much longer. So in that time, wildfires can grow very quickly and become very costly or even impossible to stop, as we've seen. We're going to cut that response time down to 5 minutes. The only way to cut down response times is through proximity. We're developing cost-effective autonomous fire suppression drones that can be pre-positioned in areas of high risk in large numbers, such specifically focusing on the wildland-urban interface, which is sort of the area around a lot of communities, especially here in the fire-prone areas in the West and Southwest. And then launch remotely and then operating in swarms. They can deliver about 50 to 100 gallons of suppressants within 5 minutes, with additional swarms arriving in the subsequent minutes to help keep the fires small until the traditional resources can arrive. What's more, our solution will be affordable enough to local and fire departments who currently can't afford aerial suppression resources, as well as private property owners who are increasingly looking to better protect their properties, given the high insurance costs and challenges with insurability. There are other companies in the space, of course, but our solution is up to 6 times cheaper while reducing response times by up to 4 times. But our approach is also scalable enough to cost effectively cover large areas. So using California as an example, our solution would be able to cover all 10,000 square miles of the wildland-urban interface, which is the high-risk area, which is home to about 11 million residents and represents about $1 trillion in economic value for about $70 million a year, right? So we can help protect, $1 trillion in economic value for approximately 70 million a year. We're building a vertically integrated product, starting with our own drone platforms that are NDAA compliant to meet federal requirements for wildfire applications. In short, you can't use Chinese drones for a lot of government applications. So far, we've built a small-scale demonstrator capable of carrying 1 gallon of water or suppressant, and we're currently testing a full-scale prototype capable of carrying 10 gallons. But the really interesting challenges are on the software side. As you can imagine, you can't simply just start a wildfire to test your suppression tech. So we've developed a proprietary high-resolution wildfire simulator where we can control the environmental conditions like wind and temperatures, the fuel types, fuel conditions to generate any kind of fire behavior that we want. And then we built a virtual environment around that in which to test our autonomous suppression software and train our AI models, as you can see here. San Bernardino County in Southern California, they're the largest county in the US by area, is an early backer of ours, and they've already received authorization from the FAA to start flying our Firespur Mark 10 drones. Those are the full-scale prototypes. Again, my name is Ryo, and I've spent about 20 years before this building and shipping products at companies like Google and startups of all stages. I'm also a licensed drone pilot, and I'm also a certified wildland firefighter. The overall team is comprised of ex-Google, Waymo, and OpenAI engineers, as well as firefighters, drone industry experts. And yeah, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing, please get in touch. We're currently sort of in between raising a pre-seed and a seed. So, looking for both kind of investors at that stage, but also, anyone who's working on something that might be related. We love to work with other companies. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Rio. And I put your LinkedIn in the chat, and feel free to also add your email or website. Okay, we have one more company. Last but not least, we have Me Prism with Tom. And Tom, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Joyce, thank you so much for having me. And fellow Chicago Maroons. I graduated from the University of Chicago in the 1990s with a degree in religion and humanities and philosophy, which qualified me to do absolutely nothing. So I went to Wall Street for several decades and spent quite a bit of time managing sort of global markets operations at a handful of large institutions. The observation that the consumer data market is in fact an actual financial market was crystal clear to us, and because of the nature of its complete lack of regulation, seemed utterly unstable, as evidenced by the GDPR and then further the privacy regulations that were starting to make their way west. The main problem that we see with this discord and disparity between a normal market and the consumer market is that there is a massive misunderstanding about the effects of this. We are in a notice and consent legal regime, which means that a company can surveil you and take measurements about you and your family, and they can sell them. And they can sell them to basically anyone with a credit card, Bitcoin, or anything else. Of course, technology is morally agnostic. Good things happen. We buy things. We have services that we like, but it can also be used in ways that can do monumental harm. Organizations are increasingly addressing this risk as individuals are as well. In the open web, there's over 600, depending on what metric you use, there are over 600 data brokers in the United States alone that buy and sell the PII, geolocation data, purchase data, you name it, about every adult in the country, children too, but this is another story. This data includes things like where you live, things you buy, who you're related to, and on and on and on. And then at an organizational level, there are companies that provide org charts that have more than enough data to design an effective social engineering campaign against an organization. This is how Ascension Health was breached. This is how MGM was breached. There's actually quite a long list of them. There's also an enormous amount of evidence, data from the FBI and international law enforcement about how organized threat actors are using this information to get into companies, particularly healthcare. That's the largest space to frankly extort rather large sums of money from them. So it's dangerous. Okay, so you have 600 or 700 of these companies out there, all of whom have PII about customers. It's a security vulnerability. It's risky to healthcare organizations, and it is largely unused. Only about 5% of the US population currently uses a service like this. It's a potentially massive market opportunity when you consider those numbers. And obviously, there are huge amounts of financial resources that are going into this space right now. And the regulatory regime has more than taken notice. There are privacy laws now in over 20 states in the US, covering well over half of the US population. It means that companies that have this data that 10 years ago could say, well, I can do whatever I want with it, now are forced to legally abide by lawful opt-out claims. The problem at its core is, how do you find the data of an individual against an array of hundreds and hundreds of companies that have it? You locate it, and then once you've found it, these companies that reside in many different jurisdictions, how do you then compel them to abide by an opt-out, deletion, or suppression request? So we built our own proprietary search engine that, with a minimal amount of a customer's PII, we can locate our customers' data at those data brokers, and we can compel its removal. And then we can confirm that it's been removed by the second operation of the same search engine. The market is currently being led by C-suite initiatives for the most part. If there is an incident there's a data breach at Home Depot, incident response comes in from, say, Mandiant or CrowdStrike. They isolate the problem, and then we'll say, well, is your executive team's data on whitepages.com? What's that? Oh, yeah, I guess it is. Can you remove that for us? No, we can't, but call Me Prism. They can do that for you. That's the path by which organizations bring us in. And then from there, it's, well, if this is a security and safety measure that protects the C-suite and important people within the company, what about everybody else? And then in instances where you have threats of physical violence against healthcare workers or store managers at Home Depot, you can see the logic of covering people like that making sense organizationally. So we've been around now for about 4.5 years. We have a growing roster of Fortune 100 companies and healthcare organizations, folks like Mass General, Chevron, Home Depot, Salesforce, and we're growing. It's a rather durable and somewhat attractive margin. You're looking at 85-90% margins on these things. And it is a product that thematically, unfortunately, because of the state of the world in which we live, is something that demand continues to grow. How am I doing for time here, Joyce? I think that's a...
you have about a minute. So
about a minute.
If you, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we are an enterprise focused organization. As I said, our system is designed to be stood up within an organization, large or small, without the need for data integration with them, connecting to their census. We've been SOC 2 compliant for 3 years. We are built to work with large institutions. We are looking for growth capital, which will be a tack on to our last price round. Yeah, reach out if you are interested. We'd love to talk to you. Thank you for your time. Go Maroons.
Yeah, go Maroons. Thank you for bringing it home for us, Tom. And I shared your LinkedIn and company website. And if you wish, you can also share your email as well. So that wraps up the actual startup spotlight. This event is actually scheduled for 15 more minutes. And so we're doing pretty well on time. And I'll just invite the startup founders to come on video camera if you can. And we'll take some questions from the audience. We'll start with the questions in the Q&A that have queued up. And then we'll go from there. So maybe we go backwards. So Tom, what are the most common practices that financial firms do that lead to data breaches or PII exposure?
Well, I mean, the biggest risk is social engineering. One of our advisors, Bruce Schneier, is a really well-known chap at Harvard. Privacy is a mindset, and the bigger the risk surface that exists to foment a social engineering attack, the higher the risk there is for an attack. Again, the methods by which sophisticated cybersecurity attackers behave now, they will go to great lengths to fool the call center that they are either the TA of the producer on the trading desk, or they're calling on behalf of the MD, and here's what they know about the MD, or reset the password because his wife can't get to the cell phone. That kind of thing happens all the time. So this is a very leaky amount of personal information in the wrong hands can be used to trick your way into an organization. We have a lot of FINRA. In fact, our anchor investors are FINRA. We have a lot of broker dealers as customers for that very reason.
Excellent. Okay, the next question goes to, I'll start with the founders here. This is for all of you. What drove you to make your leap of faith decision to launch and start a company? And so that's the first question. And I think related, how did you determine if a certain niche or segment is underserved? Curious to hear your perspectives. So who wants to get started? What drove you to make that leap of faith, Ralph?
Yeah, sure. So before working at the startup, I was actually doing research at the University of Chicago in human-computer interactions. And it was actually my co-founder who was working in the life sciences industry as a life sciences consultant at PwC. And he came to me very excited about this idea and asked if we would start the company together. And I mean, it's always going to be a leap of faith. There's never a right time to do it, but it felt as close to a right time as I felt like it could get. So I'd say more on instinct rather than, a definitive answer. And that's when we decided to make the jump.
Others?
I can go. I wanted to start Rainy, not exactly with this specific idea, but I came to Booth to start a company. I've always loved building for scientists, and I was exposed to a lot of everyday problems that scientists, particularly particle physicists, go through on their day-to-day lives. And I started out with a very different niche idea and just spoke to a lot of scientists. At this point, it's like over 300. And multiple pivots later, I think the undiscovered niche, or like, is this a real problem? It starts emerging because people start pointing that thing out even when you're not even looking for it. I wasn't looking for this problem at all, but eventually landed upon it when a lot of scientists would go on very long rants about operating their instruments. So yeah, I think talking to people really helps.
Dimitri or Rio?
I will jump in to say, the old Chicago motto says that if you see a $5 bill on the street, don't pick it up because it's a fake one. Somebody would have picked it up. And so when I was working on this topic for 5 years, and every time I was thinking about building a company, I said, look, if this was such a great idea, somebody would have built it. I got so frustrated at the end of the day, not having access to the data and the intelligence I wanted, that I decided to take a leap of faith. And I think what reality proved to me is that, yeah, there was no $5 bill on the street. It's a very tough thing to build a data business. There is a reason why nobody has done it. It's because it's a painful, tricky technical ordeal. There is a handful of people who have the expertise US-wide, and they're doing other things. And, I learned the hard way that, entrepreneurship is rewarding, but also it's exceptionally, I would say, it's a grueling process, developing products. So I got into it because I was a frustrated user, and 2 years later, I'm a lot more mature in what it means to be an entrepreneur.
And you're reducing the number of frustrated users.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Rio.
Yeah, I mean, originally started the company way back in 2021 after there was a wildfire just about a mile and a half from where we live. After spending time in Silicon Valley, we moved to a little bit more of a rural area in Northern California where there were just constant wildfires. And it's a little hard to say exactly why I'm doing this because in some ways the short answer is I just kept coming back to it and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. There's clearly a problem. We have a wildfire problem. Every year we're reminded of it. There are technical challenges and a lot of challenges in kind of what we're doing. Selling to government is unattractive for a lot of reasons. But I've always been drawn to hard problems that have a positive impact on the world around me, and somehow this is the problem that I wake up every morning wanting to continue to solve. So here we are.
Tom?
So I've been involved in some kind of healthy tech since I had kids for quite some time, and I've gotten to know folks like Michael Kaczynski, Sandra Mass, folks that did a lot of the really the work that sort of described the actual mechanism of consumer data, how it's monetized, how it worked. And I remember Cambridge Analytica, it's ancient history now, but those are the folks who essentially described this is how this works. The data is hoovered up based on your behavior. And with that, we can now predict your personality. In fact, with 200 Facebook likes, Facebook knows you better than your spouse, can determine your ocean score more accurately than your spouse can. That's 10 years ago. So again, why is that? That's the backbone of an economic milieu that's completely hidden. I'm sitting here looking at a gigantic, massive, post-Dodd-Frank, regulated, the financial market where everybody knows everything. Chain of custody is clear. Buyers and sellers have the same information. That's sort of a fair market. What irked me so much about this, particularly in a world where my kids are growing up in this world that is absolutely foreign to the experience that I had growing up, is that the asymmetry of this is so unfair that to me, again, if this were a financial market, this would be criminal behavior. That's what started it. I was sort of mad about this. The second observation was simply that, enraging or not, it is absolutely unstable because of its inefficiency. You can't have a situation where the vast majority of participants in the marketplace do not have any information and a whole bunch of organizations have all of the information. That's simply, it's inefficient, but it's also just totally unstable. My view was that will be resolved one way or another. Part of it is going to be the result of private sector actors taking action based on that theory. That's why we started it. And that's why I'm still sort of proud to be doing it. Yeah, sure, there's nothing wrong with working on Wall Street. It's an honorable profession. But I do feel like we are leaving the world in a slightly better condition than we found it based on that. So otherwise, becoming a founder, that's one of those things someone's supposed to talk you out of, I would say, just in general. That's the true answer. So, yeah.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is exciting, but it's hard. It could be a lonely journey. So in the interest of time, we'll keep going. And this question is for Rio. Have you tried getting the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety to vet your technology? This is from Michael in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of hear more about maybe some of the thoughts behind the question, but I'll kind of give a short answer around insurance in general. I haven't talked to them specifically, but I have talked to some folks in the insurance side, and a lot of them, at the end of the day, they care about being able to either mitigate risk or calculate risk more effectively, right? And so, yes, absolutely, what we're doing in the long term, if we show that it works and indeed lowers risks for, whether it's individual properties or entire communities, insurance is going to be very interested. And there's some interesting kind of like, I think, business models we can explore where maybe property owners get reimbursed from insurance companies or lower certain insurance premiums, so on and so forth. But a lot of those conversations kind of start with, does it work, right? And like, do we have the data to be able to, factor into their risk calculations? And we're a little bit of a ways off from that. Like, if you think of it as like drug trials, we're kind of like in the animal trial, not the clinical trial phase. So I think once we get a little bit further along and we're able to show data that it works, like, and I think insurance is going to be a huge part of what we do.
Excellent. And feel free, Rio, to find Michael. You can see his question and name in the Q&A. Okay, before we go back to Tom, maybe we just take two more questions. We have about 3 minutes left. So the question that we'll pose, I'll just group that into one, which is that, all of you have started with an idea and raise a bit of money or raise money and expand it, land a customer, serve those customers. If you can give the audience a sense, like, how does that come about? How do you actually find these customers? How do you serve those customers, especially as early stage company where you have to build your brand, your reputation, you have to find a way to show your products and then go through that procurement process. So to date, how did you acquire those customers? Is it inbound? Is it outbound? What advice would you have? What learnings would you have for the audience?
I can take a stab. For us, every single customer has been a warm connection, and they were not someone I was seeking out directly. It was like connection of a connection, or none of these were people that I was strategically reaching out to or something. In fact, the people that I was reaching out to or even showing up to their labs, it never worked out. But then things worked out in weird ways where I showed up at one lab and they were like, oh, we're too busy. Sorry, don't bother me. But then the building manager managed to connect me to another scientist at a different lab. And then they connected me to a different person and they were very receptive. And they were like, oh yeah, this is very real. And it started out with just me trying to understand the problem. Very customer discovery focused and very trying to get into their shoes focused. Can I come and shadow your lab? Can I come and see how you work? And doing that for several weeks to, hey, I'm building this out. Do you want to try it out? And it evolved very naturally. And where for the first one, the proteomics lab, it was a very long cycle as we were also trying things out. Eventually for others, it was a similar process, but the cycle would shrink and shrink. And that is how it has kind of gone on for us so far.
Tom?
We've been blessed with a pretty awesome cap table. We communicate with a great deal, and they're either involved in other venture investments or other industries where they can sort of help us break the waves. One of the investors is one of the founders, Willis Re. So we have access to elements of the insurance industry that have helped us with Gallagher, with RGA, with Chubb, and On the finance side, we have senior folks from a number of Wall Street firms that have helped us get all kinds of family office customers, other financial institutions, which are hard to get. And then building on those relationships, which is really just, there are just no shortcuts. It's something you have to foster these, grow these relationships, and nurture them, and spend an awful lot of time on them. And you cannot have too many conversations. It's just literally impossible to do. So yeah, there just aren't any shortcuts, I would say.
All right. Any comments, Rio or Ralph, for this? Okay. Well, I think we are at time, and I invite all the founders to look through the Q&A just to see if there's any question direct toward you. I think, Tom, there's one for you, and then also Rio, there's another one for you in the chat, not the Q&A function. And for everyone joining, thank you so much for your time and for listening to the panel and for listening to the 5 awesome UChicago founder-led companies. And if you have connections, if you want to engage with them, I encourage you to do that. And hopefully we'll come back in the first quarter